we're back. He had a lot to say today, or some to say. But I think this is one of the things that I am starting with, is that the truth is neither data nor interpretations of it are neutral. Humans gather, interpret, and present data, and we are flawed, complex, and decidedly unneutral. And when we forget to remember that, sometimes we accept things that just aren't there. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the callingbullshit.org website a little bit more. We've talked about them before. The people who owned that website, taught the class, and did the book on it are part of what is now called the Center for Informed Public at the University of Washington, which is a joint effort there. And so we're going to go over and take a look at some of the resources at that website. And Charlie has included those resources. She's putting them in the chat. They will also be included in the email that you get, and they will be included on our website as well. So I need to go back to Safari, and I'm going to share my screen again. So the home just has these various things, and under tools, you will find a variety of things. One of the tools is visualization. And so each of these are things that they talk about in their the entire class is available on YouTube. So you can watch the whole quarter-long class, and all of this information is in it. It's also in their book, which I'm in the process of reading. But this one shows you about various axes. And remember, the two people who started this class, infographics and data presentation are in their wheelhouse. So bar chart axes should include a 0. So here we have an axis of the average number of average weekly hours of work in the main job. And you'll notice that it goes from 36 to 42, which I don't think includes a 0. When we do include a 0, however, you'll notice that that Germany is up here pretty high in terms of the number of hours worked, whereas the EU average is down here further. So same information, but it gives it, but you'll notice there's not very much difference between these other ones. Whereas if you look at this graphic, it looks like there's a huge difference here between France, but relative to 0, that's not true. And so they give a variety of other ones. They do talk about the one that John talked about on the video, which is the annual average annual global temperature in Fahrenheit. And then this is the one from the Washington Post. And I think this is a really good example because I don't know about you guys, but I have had arguments about climate change with some people, and that is difficult. Here it says Bloomberg's Business Week opted for the direct and devastating satire, plotting the year AD on the y-axis against the very same quantity on the x-axis, showing that this was even a flatter line. So, Anne, go ahead.
You're muted, Anne.
Thank you. I forget you do that to us. Going back to the graphic that you showed from the Washington Post on the climate change, that did not start at 0. So.
But that wasn't a bar graph.
That wasn't a bar graph. That was an X, Y
so
axis.
You say a bar graph only at 0? Not, okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, I totally appreciate the difference of opening up the lines there. Now I see the 0 part. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's the difference. Thank you, Charlie. And so that's a good point. So that's an example. They have many other examples. That particular article probably takes, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes to watch. I've watched the video that information comes from, and it takes an hour. So that's one option. I'm going to go share my screen again and take a look at proportional ink, which I just love. For some reason, I love the title of that, proportional ink. I don't know why, but I do. This again, proportional ink is comes from Edward Tufte, who said the representation of numbers as physically measured on the surface of the graphic should be directly proportional to the numerical quantities represented. And that's an old definition back from '83. And so what we're going to look at this is this graphic, which I think is kind of cool, the top 10 most read books in the world. So we have this book, and we pretty much know that the Bible is up here, and then we've got quotations from Chairman Mao and Harry Potter and going forward, you know, backwards. And it looks like there's just such a big difference, but I can't see you all while I'm doing this, but the problem with this graph is that here is where the zero line is, right here, because the books are all at the zero, their tops of them. They do that so that their titles go here. But it looks like there is a zero on this bar graph, but it makes it look like the Bible is proportionally so much bigger than all the rest. And if you think about these two, Think and Grow Rich is at 30 and the Diary of Anne Frank is at 27. And so it's not really showing that in the way it should. And then it goes on to talk about line graphs. I think the line graph I like the best isn't on here. The line graph I like the best, it may be at the bottom. Just a second, let me see if I can find it. This is obviously a long article, but is where they inverted it was for a gun ad, and it may have been in a different article. And it was inverted, so the zero was at the top, and it looked like gun deaths were not very high. It was completely and it does talk about bubble charts, and we're not going to talk about it. It has all these different kinds of charts. So you can read this article and go, oh, I didn't realize all of these different charts existed and how to look at them and how to read them properly. And I did learn all that stuff once upon a time in graduate school, but that was 33 years ago. So, you know, getting that reminder is really, really helpful. The last thing I want to share about the Calling Bullshit class website is that they also have case studies. And so again, these case studies, one of the things this is a food stamp fraud case study, which is what's called a basic one. If we go back to the case study page, it starts here. It's called Bullshit in the Wild. Spotting it is wild is something you, so they have basic case studies, intermediate case studies, and advanced case studies. And it goes into a considerable amount of detail, and each of these represent a particular episode of their class. And this food stamp fraud one is from, and here it has the link to the videos should you want to go to the spring 2017 class and do this. But this one is talking about food stamp fraud, and it's telling you a way of trying to figure out if a meme like this, what happened was Fox News reported that in, I think it was 2016, $70 million went to abuse. People fraudulently got that money. And you think that's a huge amount. And then when talking about big numbers, they start talking about using a Fermi estimation. And I may have pronounced that inaccurately. And so it goes through some estimating without checking the numbers. And basically in doing this, using that estimation technique, it turns out that that was about a 2% fraud rate. When in fact, when they actually went and checked the data with the USDA, it was actually 0.1%. It's 0.2% versus 0.1%. And so the case studies give you an opportunity to go through particular things in the wild. And as this has been out, if they get an update, they will update. And they also have conversations with the authors of the studies, and people argue back and forth. And you can see this as an academic exercise, but you can also see that if somebody's saying we should just not fund the SNAP program because there was $70 million stolen from the federal government. And if you just take that and try to have that argument about how much, whatever else you could use with $70 million without knowing it's only 0.1% of the entire budget, which is a very low fraud rate, if you think about it, that's not too bad. So we're calling that out on this particular one because there's lots of information. The other reason is that, well, this class uses the crash course videos and it gives a good overview. If you're thinking about opportunities to do book groups or things on misinformation or disinformation with regard to your leagues or other groups that you might be with. The Calling Bullshit book or videos could be a source of a way of getting people together if they're more interested in doing that detail. So that's why we're talking about it.
Also, Catherine, I'd like to point out that one of the things Catherine and I both thought was useful is having a resource where you could go do some quick comparative reviews of what a misleading axis looks like, or the proportional ink examples, because there aren't a lot of them out there that are easily accessible. So bringing those forward to you today and then linking them on our website is a way to keep that up. So if you want a quick resource to review or just to send somebody to say, like, that graphic doesn't quite play out and here's why, go check out this link.
Right. So I think that's really good.